Okay, well, I know Commissioner Bremer's excused, so. Dave or Paul, had you heard from Commissioner Daniels as to whether he was going to be able to attend the meeting?
I had not, no.
Okay,
No.
I have not either, but we do have quorum, so,
We
because
do, okay.
Veronica's still
Oh.
here, so.
she's not on my roll call,
She's not?
so she is not.
Huh,
She should be until the
She
new
should-
person's appointed.
yep.
So Veronica should
Okay.
still be a yes. We're not getting rid of her yet. So
Okay, well,
She can't escape yet.
she's not on my roll call, so I won't her anymore, so, but okay, we have her. All right, let me add her to my list then.
You don't want me here, I won't be here. I got.
Oh, no.
we need you tonight. Absolutely. We got all new standing committees won't get appointed till next, at least next council meeting. So
Okay. Perfect. So then, Veronica, are you still Alder Corpus Dax at this point?
Technically, yes.
All right, I just want to make sure that I'm addressing you properly. Okay. Okay, all right, then we will get started. Good evening and welcome to the Monday, April 11th meeting of the Green Bay Planning Commission. We will start with a roll call. Chair Lisa Hanson, present. Vice Chair Jacob Miller.
Present.
Commissioner Sydney Bremer is excused. Commissioner Ken Ravinsky.
Present.
Alder Veronica Corpus Dax.
Present.
And Commissioner Darius Daniels. Has he made it on yet? Okay. All right, and he is absent at this point. Moving on to the approval of the agenda for the April 11th, 2022 meeting of the Green Bay Plan Commission. Do we need to amend it to add Alder Corpus Dax to the roll call?
Let's amend it just to cover our butts just in case. So
good
motion
call,
to-
Jake. Good call.
motion to approve with the addition of Alder Corpus Dax on the roll call.
Second.
Motion by Vice Chair Miller, second by Commissioner Ravinsky. Favor.
Aye.
Any opposed? And then moving on to the approval of the minutes from the March 21st, 2022 meeting of the Green Bay Plan Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Ravinsky, second by Alder Corpus Dax. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And then moving on to regular business, and item number 1 is a public hearing. This public hearing has been properly posted and public notification has been published in the Green Bay Press Gazette. The Plan Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda items. We invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, whether you favor, oppose, or are only providing information in this matter, and your comments or concerns. We also ask that you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. You must be recognized by the Plan Commission in order to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. We will now open the public hearing on item number 1, public hearing on the request to rezone the following. 627 Harriman Street from low-density residential to general commercial, and 645 Harriman Street from light industrial and low-density residential to general commercial, submitted by Robert Walshek Jr., R&R Properties LLP property owner. In addition, the Community and Economic Development Department requests the rezoning of the following properties: 619 and 621 Harriman Street from low-density residential to general commercial, 1643, 1647 Cass Street from light industrial to general commercial, 1649 to 1651 Cass Street from light industrial and low-density residential to general commercial, and a portion of 1654 East Mason Street from low-density residential to highway commercial. I guess if staff could give a brief overview for the public hearing.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry for the large title heading. We usually don't get that big on those, but anyways, this property is located in the 1650 block of East Mason Street. It's bounded by Harriman Street on the west side and Cass Street on the south side. So some landmarks here would be Happy Joe's Pizza, not too far away on East Mason, and Proca Wall, which is just on the west side of Harriman. As you mentioned before, it's kind of in two different parts. There's an original application to rezone 627 and 645 to allow for a pet crematorium expansion. When staff looked at the rest of the block, we kind of noticed that there were some inconsistencies with the land use and the comprehensive plan. So that's why we put forth those other items that you mentioned to kind of clean up the rezoning, clean up the zoning in the area to make it compliant with the city's comprehensive plan.
Okay, thank you so much, Paul. And then with the public hearing, we're looking to hear from interested parties who are looking to speak in favor of this item. Is there anyone looking to speak in opposition to this item? And if you are calling in on internet audio, it is yourself. Is there anyone wishing to provide information only on this item? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Let the record reflect that no one has come forward and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the corresponding actionable item. Item number 2, consideration with possible action on the following rezonings: 627 Harriman Street from low density residential to general commercial, and 645 Harriman Street from light density residential to general commercial, submitted by Robert Walshek Jr., R&R Properties LLP. In addition, the Community and Economic develops the rezoning of the following properties: 619 and 621 Harriman Street from low density residential to general commercial, 1643 and 1647 Cass Street from light industrial to general commercial, 1649 and 1651 Cass Street from light industrial to general commercial, and a portion of 1654 East Mason Street from low density residential to highway commercial.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I apologize. So this property again is in 1650 block of East Mason Street. There's kind of some lower density residential to the north, as well as some multifamily. West across Harriman is the funeral home, a commercial use. To the south along Cass are some kind of light industrial type uses. When we look at the future land use, the comprehensive plan, it shows all commercial. That's kind of the basis for us supporting this request tonight. And when we look at the zoning map, there again, there's kind of a variety of zoning here that needed to be cleaned up. There's some light industrial and some low density residential that didn't really seem to match some of the existing land uses and didn't really provide the highest and best use for this particular area. I can try and run through real quickly just some of the impacts of the rezoning on each property here. The original request again was from 627 and 645, and that's kind of the mid-block here. There's an existing crematorium here, and a rezoning to C1 will allow for an expansion of that use in the near future. To the north along Hireman and Mason Street is 619 and 621. 619 is really just vacant. It has a garage, which is considered non-conforming. A rezoning would not impact that property's future use, or current use, I should say. The home to the south will be impacted. It will become a non-conforming use as a result of the rezoning, but will allow for that to become a commercial property in the future and again, higher and better use. When we come down the block a little bit at 1643, that is a single family home. Currently non-conforming. Rezoning to C1 is not going to impact its future use. There is a tavern next door. A rezoning to C1 would make that a permitted use. Moving down the block on Cass, I think there's a former daycare there. Again, a commercial use, rezoning to C1 would make that permitted. And for the corner piece where Tim Sons is, the steakhouse, there is the tiniest piece of R1 zoning on that property. It's really just to clean up for us to snap the line to the property line to clean it up. So we notified affected property owners within 200 feet. We didn't receive any calls or questions on this one. So staff is supporting the requests as proposed.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
I'd make a motion to approve.
Second, I always appreciate good zoning cleanup. That's appreciated, Paul.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion amongst the commission?
Excuse me, Chair. I do see Darius just showed up to the meeting.
Oh, hi, and now we do have a Commissioner Darius Daniels is now present as well. All right, so do we need to, is there any further discussion? Otherwise, we have a motion and a second. All right, so a motion by Commissioner Rubinski, a second by Vice Chair Miller. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any?
Aye.
opposed? Sorry. Any
Can we ask a
opposed?
question? Can we ask a question?
The floor is closed, sir. It's for the commission at this point.
Oh,
So I'm sorry. So we have a. Let's start that. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, and then that will move forward to the next city council meeting, which is,
Tuesday, April 19th.
Tuesday, April 19th. All right, and then moving on to item number 3, which is a public hearing on the request to create a planned unit development overlay to establish regulations associated with phase 1 development of a new industrial park at 641 Grandview Road, 3714 East Mason Street, 3760 East Mason Street, and 3731 Finger Road, submitted by the City of Green Bay Community and Economic Development Department.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll give a quick overview before the public hearing. I'll just pop up a map quick. A lot of stuff going on in this map, but it'll come into play as we get into the later discussion. So what you see outlined here in red, it's 5 parcels, 4 addresses. This is the area, the subject property that you'll be talking about for the planned unit development. It's on the corner of Grandview and Finger Road, or Grandview and Mason Street, kind of on both corners. About 50 acres of property. This would be the first phase of a new industrial park on the east side. You've probably heard us talking about this a few times in the past. And we've been going through the Economic Development Authority with it as well. Again, these regulations that we'd be looking at tonight and the PUD would be for what's in red on this map.
Okay, thank you, Dave. And
Madam
now-
Chair, Madam Chair, it's Alden
Yeah.
Harp. Could I ask for clarification on the map, please? I'm trying to understand how this is in the new District 1, because my understanding is the new District 1 ends at Humboldt Road. So I just, could we have the map up so I can understand how this will apply to the District 1?
Okay, here is the map. I don't have the aldermanic districts on that map. But right here. So District 1 will actually go down Grandview. You can see my cursor. Go down Grandview to Finger, and then it cuts over Finger all the way to the city limits. So probably 3/5 is currently in District 1. And then these two smaller parcels south of Finger Road and Mason, as it extends, would be District 2.
Oh.
So these three in District 1, these two in District 2.
Okay, so that's the new map, because then it doesn't go down. Where's Mason Street on the map? Can you point to
Mason is-
Mason Street?
Mason is right here.
But I don't go anywhere near Mason Street with the new district. The old district did. The old District 1 did, but the new District 1, I mean, you absolutely have the new map there for 2022, not 2021.
Take a look. Yeah, I believe this one, it has, the map is dated January 19th, 2022.
Okay. That's, was a surprise to Alder Veronica Corpus Dax and myself. So, okay, then that must be right.
Yeah, I'm looking at the old map. I think the old one right now. And it would have pretty much all been in one at that point in the old map. You would have went south of Finger and Mason.
Okay.
Okay,
District
thank you.
2 would have
Thanks
ran
for the clarification. I must believe it then. If you're saying it's true, I must believe it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alderdorf. And then looking, all right, so now with public hearing, we're looking to hear from parties who are looking to speak in favor of this item. Looking to hear from parties who are in opposition to this item. And is there anyone looking?
Madam Chair, there was
Oh.
a gentleman was raising his hand in the corner here.
Okay, if you can state your name and address for the record, please, and please continue your testimony to 3 minutes.
My name is Jim Gretza. My wife Jackie is sitting next to me. The address is 3667 Finger Road, right across the street. Okay? I oppose the 3-minute limit, first of all, because you did not provide any significant information about why this was being changed, who was buying it, what manufacturing they're going to do there, what pollutants are being distributed from this place. So can you answer those questions?
Okay, and Mr. Gretza, with the public hearing, you can provide your testimony to the commission, but we don't answer questions in the public hearing portion. So you can
Well,
certainly provide,
How do I get my questions answered?
this is the public hearing portion. The next portion is the section where it's an actionable item, and we will speak more in depth at that time.
No, I want my questions answered.
Okay, and Mr. Gretza, I'm not able to provide that during the public hearing portion of this
Is
item.
this the United States of America?
Mr. Gretza, if you have some testimony to say why you're in opposition to it.
Okay,
we're certainly
I'm
happy to hear
opposed to
that.
it because of the things I just told you. There was not
Okay.
enough information given. You didn't tell me who wants to change. You didn't tell me what industry is going to go in there. You didn't tell me what products they're going to make. You didn't tell me what pollutants they're going to make. Second item, it seems to be totally inappropriate to put an industrial park across the street from residential property. You would think that normally you would have residential, multifamily, commercial, light industrial, industrial. So again, you're not giving me information, so this is stupid. So this is supposed to be the United States where the government is open. And there's, we use the word transparent. Well, there's no transparency here. Somebody's hiding behind this. I've been told there is somebody who wants to put some business there. Why can't you tell me who it is?
Again, this is a public hearing and there is procedure. to
And this
follow.
is a pissed off person who lives in Green Bay that's paying taxes.
Okay, you can certainly provide your information, but we don't have to listen to that language, sir.
Well,
Okay,
we don't
go-
have to listen to your language. My wife's got. her-
Point of order, point of order.
Thank you, Vice Chair Miller.
No, they're done. Yep.
Okay. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to this item? Is there anyone wishing to provide information only? Is there anyone else wishing to? And if anyone from the commission sees hands, please let me know. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Let the record reflect that this public hearing, that no one came forward and this public hearing is now closed. Moving
Ma'am,
on to
This was not,
corresponding actionable
I
items.
responded, you did not answer my question. I raised my
Jesse,
hand.
can we get them muted, please?
I don't have that capability, so whoever has that capability. Okay, so moving on to the actionable item. Item number 4, consideration with possible action on a request to create a planned unit development overlay to establish regulations associated with phase 1 development of a new industrial park at 641 Grandview Road, 3714 East Mason Street, 3760 East Mason Street, and 3731 Finger Road, submitted by the City of Green Bay Community and Economic Development Department.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And hopefully this can answer some of the questions that came before in the public hearing section. So let me share my screen again. Okay, everybody see? Yes, okay. So the same map you had seen. Again, the area being discussed is in red. And this map is a little bit further. So you are a few miles from Highway 43. This is Mason Street. Grandview runs north-south arterial. Northview is a north-south arterial. Erie is a north-south arterial. So this is kind of just giving you the basic location. The property to the north, well, I'll kind of get to that. So what you see in the red line is the potential future industrial park that would come in future phases. And then what you see outlined in blue is the existing I-43 Business Center. The next slide is just to zoom in a little bit closer so you can kind of take a look at the land uses out there. I'm going to get to that in another couple slides. But basically to the north, you have very low density residential ag lands. To the west is low density residential as far as uses go. To the south, there's a few single family homes and primarily ag land. And that continues all the way to the south. And then to the west, you have the I-43 Industrial Park next to Erie. So this is an aerial shot. Again, phase 1 is outlined in baby blue. The ultimate phase, and I'll get to why that's important in a second, is outlined in red. And this is just a close-up of the phase 1 property. So what you see on the property is an old barn building from a former farm. There's a navigable waterway that runs through this portion of this portion of the site. And then there is a water treatment facility. It's not a treatment facility, but it's a water supply facility. Water comes in down Finger Road and then connects here and is distributed throughout the Green Bay area. This is the primary water facility for the community. This is a future land use plan. So this is the 2022 comprehensive plan that was adopted in 2003. Shows future land uses. So you can see everything that's in this purple color is industrial or business park. This green area are what are considered environmentally sensitive areas. The dark brown is medium to high density housing. The shades of yellow are low density housing, and low to medium density is sort of the darker color. And this tan color is what's called a traditional neighborhood development. And I'll kind of get to that when I get to the zoning, which I'm at right now. So this is a planned unit development that was approved years ago. It was amended a couple times. It's what's called a traditional neighborhood development. So it encompasses a lot of the area to the west and also to the north of this subject site. So what you see here in gray is sort of the southern or the northern portion of the proposed industrial park. And what is actually, we can't see the blue, but what's outlined in blue is the phase 1. So directly to the north is a multifamily designation, likely put in here as a buffer to the industrial business park future land use. Across the street is low density residential. As you go west, as you go north along Grandview is multifamily in this darker colors, commercial in the pink, and again it goes to multifamily as you go north to varying densities. As it gets darker, it gets more dense, and you'll see some of that to the west. But really what was important with me showing this, because it doesn't show on the comprehensive plan, is this multifamily and then sort of all of the different uses that are in the TND, the traditional neighborhood design. I'm not going to get deep into that since that's been in the books for quite a while. When you look at the zoning for the site, right now there's strip R1 zoning that basically goes along Finger. It's old use zoning. And then this tan color is rural residential, which is primarily our holding zone. Very, very large lot, single family, minimum 10 acres. Ag uses are permitted. And then what you can see kind of outlined in the blue again is the I-43 Business Center, and the gray indicating primarily industrial uses in this section of the business center. So again, just kind of give you the clarity of what's going on out there. These are 2 excerpts from the PUD that you have in your packet, and I'll go over some of the highlights of that in a second. But again, overall, the long-term goal for the Grandview Industrial Park, as shown in the comprehensive plan, would be to encapsulate all the properties that are in red for a future industrial park. That's about 375 acres. What we have up here is about 50 acres right now in the phase 1. Phase 1, again, outlined in the baby blue dashes. You can see the same thing here, and this is going to relate to the PUD. This is the land use. So it is an industrial park, shows future industrial. But what this PUD does is it allows all the arterial streets to have a commercial component. Now that commercial component is typically accessory to housing and workforce. So things like gas stations, hair salons, daycares, that kind of stuff that goes along with a workforce and then a housing to the north and the west could be, but isn't required to be encapsulated on these arterial roads. And you can kind of see that when you look at the PUD, you can see that in the land use table. So with all that background, I did not put all of the regulations that you have in your packet on the screen, but they are online in the packet and you should have them. But what I'm going to kind of hit is just sort of the highlights of that PUD. And then if you have questions, just feel free to, jot those down for each section. And we can go over those individually. So it was sort of the history and the intent. So I want to give you some of the history on this because it's a 20-year-old plan that's been in place. In 2018, the city, once all the properties in the I-43 Business Center were full, staff started looking at this area as the expansion. Also at that time, utilities were being run on Erie, some on Grandview. So it was opening up the area for development. So we looked at our comprehensive plan. We met with all the property owners within a much greater area of the industrial park. And that was the end of 2018 about. In 2019, after we had talked to the owners, we had to do or due diligence. We did a wetland, not delineation, but a wetland study, which I think we might have shared with the Plan Commission. So that was done by the mid-2019. We brought those results to the neighbors, and we shared those with them. So everybody got their own wetland study portion for their property. And started to ask them if they were interested at all in this use or selling the property, and just getting them geared up to know what's coming. When we went to the EDA in 2 or 3 meetings in 2019, 2020, they had requested the city do another action, which would be a commercial and industrial market study. They wanted to make sure if a business park was going to be going in or an industrial park's going in, that those uses are viable and needed and necessary. So that was conducted by NAI Pfefferly, which is a real estate company out of the Valley. They also work up here. They did a commercial and industrial market study, and also took in considerable surveying about the pandemic, because that was right in the heart of the pandemic. So how that could potentially affect future growth, future needs. Some of the big things that came out of that study was a massive deficiency in industrial zoned property, and specifically industrial zoned for distribution centers, which is, according to that study, one of the biggest future industrial users coming. So that would be like a distribution warehouse, like an Amazon warehouse, that type of thing. So that market study was brought back to the EDA in early 2021. And in the fall of 2021, staff had put together potential land uses, also determine the area for a future industrial park based on, desire of property owners and also wetlands. And then we also came up with the overall standards. So that was the fall of last year. We kind of massaged those a little bit in late 2021, and we created the planned unit development regulations that you see in your packets. And also the phased approach. So that we would start with the city property first, doesn't need very much utilities, not much work at all in there. And then in that time frame as well, the city was approached by a developer, industrial developer, who was interested in the property. I believe they had seen it because it was comprehensive plan showed it as industrial. So they did approach the city, and that kind of speeded things up to bring this here to you tonight. Also, I'd like to point out that the developer did go before the Economic Development Authority at 5 o'clock this evening. So they just finished up before this meeting, where I believe they did get approval to go forward with the development agreement. So I can share that site plan with you. The one point I do want to stress on that sharing the site plan is these regulations are for an industrial park, not for a specific site. So you really have to look at the land uses that are in the industrial park, not a specific buyer or a specific developer. And I'm going to go through those really kind of quick. But what we plan to do, if this goes forward after council, in the spring of this year, we'll hold another meeting with all of the owners within the industrial park area. Kind of give them an introduction to the planned unit development. Let them know that's coming forward. Get their feedback, and in the summer of this year, we'll probably determine infrastructure needs, and also, desire of overlaying it on private property or city purchase of property. But that's kind of above this level. It's more of a EDA council level thing. So that is sort of your basic history of how this industrial park has been developing. And the PUD that you have in your packet is going to hit each one of these topic areas. So the regulations are really primarily for light to medium industrial, as I had mentioned. So not heavy like concrete batch plants or massive outdoor storage, more of a regular manufacturing facility. distribution centers, processing, production, transportation uses. As I had mentioned, there would be the ability to have select commercial uses along the arterial roads. Those would not be required, however, but they would be optional. Dimensional regulations, which I'm not going to get into the exact numbers unless you ask me to, but they are really focused on a greener industrial park. Sort of like I-43 was really a green business center. This would really be a green industrial park. It has much greater setbacks, buffering, landscape requirements. It also includes architectural standards, which is new for industrial structures in our city. So it has quite a bit of things that the regular industrial zoning does not have. It also has a lot of things that encourages or incentivizes green infrastructure practices. So it's not being forced, but they're being promoted, or incentives to make those happen, or to hope that those happen. Yeah, so that is kind of it. I guess I can, if you want me to go through those sections, I can. Or I can go through really quickly right now and just kind of tell you the difference from our general industrial districts. So again, it is an industrial focus, pulls out a lot of those heavier users, and you can see the land use table on page 2 and 3. So it kind of pulls out the heavier users, and if they do start getting heavy, it becomes conditional. So council would have to approve them. Again, transportation, utility, and public service uses, the office and mixed uses are permitted, and they're also permitted along the arterial roads on their own. Restaurants, service businesses, some smaller retail sales, things like health clubs and fitness centers, gas stations, and then specialty schools or personal instruction schools and group daycares are all permitted in those sections as well. Won't go over heavily the accessory uses, but I do want to point out that any outdoor storage is required to be fully screened. Storage can't be higher than the screening mechanism. As far as site-related requirements, lot width and area, these are broken down into 2 sections, really, a commercial and an industrial. Industrial would have to have at least an acre. Commercial could drop down, much like our current code, to 10,000 square feet. Frontages also changed drastically. So commercial frontages are about 75 feet, where industrial would require 200. Setbacks are similar for both. It's a larger 25-foot front yard setback. Sides and rears are a little bit smaller. But what I'd want to point out is if you are adjacent to a residential use, either your side or your rear yard, that setback would be increased and require additional screening and landscaping. Impervious surface, again, is at about 70% with an incentive to go to 80 if you use green infrastructure practice and green stormwater management. Let me see if any of these other things. One of the other big changes in here is the landscaping. So this is a much more robust than our general landscaping code. It requires a certain number of trees and shrubs per square footage for the lot. It also requires frontage landscaping. So anywhere where your lot is along a roadway, it requires heavily landscaped there. Again, I had mentioned the buffering of outdoor storage before. There's also the large buffer from residential, which requires, fencing, berming, evergreen screening to a height of 8 feet. Interior parking lot landscaping would only be required for customer employee parking. Storage areas would not be required to have that. And also some building foundation landscaping is required as well. Staff is anticipating stormwater will be regional ponds, but there may be requirements to do on-site retention as well. As far as lighting, refuse, and signage, those all would be right out of the regular zoning code, with the exception of industrial park identity signage, which if I go up one, you can see could be located at any of these 4 locations, basically saying, like the I-43 signage, entering Grandview Industrial Park. And then probably one of the most significant differences between this PUD and most others that you've seen in the city in the past is the structural design regulations. And those basically are your architectural standards. So the applicability, any new structure would fall into place with that. There is an exception and appeal process. You can appeal to the Department of Community Development for alternate building materials or special architectural designs. If that is denied, that appeal can come forward through the Plan Commission then. Obviously, if it's approved, usually not much of an issue. For commercial uses, the primary materials, so at least 60% of the outside facade would have to be brick, stone, glass, or windows or doors. And when I say glass, curtain glass, storefront glass. They would be allowed to have not more than 40% of the front and sides, or 75% of the rear being concrete panels, or other, wood composites, decorative or split place block. Again, this is for commercial. Industrial would be a little bit different. That's going to allow a little bit more of those concrete panels, cementitious panels, architectural metal to be on that front and side. There are prohibited materials, no non-decorative block, no asphalt or fiberglass siding, no non-decorative or architectural metal panels or corrugated metals, no plywood, chipboard, or those types of woods, or no imitation or fake brick or stone or gravel aggregates. It's typically where you see the gravel pressed into a compound, so it looks like it's a gravel wall, but it's really gravel pressed into glue. We do require no more than 35 feet of height without council approval for commercial buildings and 50 for industrial. Heights obviously for industrial need to be higher. Facade articulation is also a pretty important piece. So if it's an industrial property, you can have no longer than 100 feet without some type of vertical articulation in a wall. The goal there is to stop large expanse of blank walls. In the commercial district, that's only 50 feet. There is also a requirement for fenestration, which is windows and doors. That would be for industrial, 10% of the ground floor. Commercial would have to have 20%. And then upper floors would all be at 10%. Entrances have to face the street if they're for customers. They have to be defined, I guess, highlighted, to put it in a different term, so that they're visible from the right of way and they're obviously an entrance lit. And of course, like all of our districts, any mechanical or exterior building systems, if they're on the roof, they need to be screened. If they're on the walls, they would have to be integrated into the wall somehow. And if they're not on the building, those would have to be screened from view, and also not in front of the building in the street. That is really the heavy basis for that PUD, and encompasses pretty much everything that's in there. I didn't get down to every detail, as this thing is, quite a few pages. But within that, feel free to give me any kind of questions on that. Before I make the recommendation, I want to share what came out of the Economic Development Authority. Now, again, I want to point out this is one project that's looking to go into an industrial park. When you look at those regulations, it's for all industrial development, not this one specifically. They would have to meet these regulations in their site plan. Let me see. Here we go. So this is the site plan that was introduced to the Economic Development Authority this morning, or excuse me, just at 5 o'clock today. This is a pet food manufacturer. This is Grandview. This is Finger. This is Mason Street. So they're primarily focused on Finger and Mason. There is an exit out onto Grandview. The frontage of Grandview is currently on this conceptual plan. Again, has not been vetted through zoning. Doesn't show any development at this point This would be a candidate for commercial development if they so choose to sell it off or develop something. But this is sort of their site plan. We looked at it very cursory, but have not checked it against the regulations whatsoever. But I would point out that the PUD regulations were vetted between two private industrial developers, Immel Construction and Shoe Construction. So we did pull their comments in to make sure that these are something that's the regulations are standard for the market. Made a few changes, but nothing too substantial. Our notification area went to every property owner in 400 feet. We also included notification and additional information to all property owners in all future phases of the potential future phases of the industrial park. Aldersdorf and Corpus Stacks were notified as well. As of the date of this drafting, we had received 4 calls on the PUD. 2 calls were into support. Both were inquiring about expansion and possibility of when this could expand south onto their properties. And there were 2 calls of objection. One was strictly based on the loss of rural character. They moved out to be in the country and now this isn't the country anymore. And the second was didn't feel the land use was compatible with surrounding residential land uses. Felt that there could be noise and traffic issues. And those were the major concerns of the call. But with that being said, staff is recommending approval of the PUD as proposed in your packet.
Okay, thank you so much, Dave. So now that, I mean, this industrial park, this is all part, this has been in the comprehensive plan since the comprehensive plan was done for this area, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
2000, adopted in 2003. And I can bring that slide up if you'd like to see it again.
Yeah, well, actually, why don't you please?
Okay, so this is an excerpt from the land use map in the comprehensive plan. Again, the purple is business and industrial park. The red is commercial. The dark browns are high density housing. And as you get lighter into a yellow color, they get lower density. And this was that traditional neighborhood design that had that mix of uses in it.
Right. So now with the comprehensive plans, we do them about every 20 years?
We do a full rewrite every 20 years. We're gearing up to do that right now. We do annual updates every year, and we do a little bit more comprehensive of an update every 5 to 10 years.
Okay. But I mean,
So again-
sorry.
Go ahead.
Anything that we're talking about now would be probably reflected on the newest, you know, when it comes out in another year or two, this would follow, that would track the same.
Likely.
Correct.
I mean, I can't speak
So-
for the council, obviously, but
Can you put the gallery view back on for me, please?
certainly.
Thank you. Okay.
So Dave, quick question.
Yes.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, the plan you just put up was adopted in 2003, and we are now, did we not have any, again, I'm newer to the council within the last 2 years, so we did not have any developers within that time, or are we now just changing the plan so developers can come in?
No, the plan has never changed. It's always shown that development that's come out to that distance, there's been a lot of factors over the last 20 years. So the I-43 industrial park has expanded twice in that time frame and continued going east following the plan. Utilities were started to be run out there last year and the year before, opening up a lot of that. It's currently mainly farmland. But opening up that land for potential development. Still utilities need to be put in, but the major ones are there. So it's just sort of a progress in time, which is kind of why you update that plan regularly and every 20 years. The goal is, that you're projecting out for 20 years and then you can project out further. This is the city limits, however.
Yeah. So would it be fair to say that this has been proposed since 2003, but the infrastructure has just made it more economically feasible for developers to consider building on this land now? Would that be acceptable?
That would be, but I would also add that, market changes over the last 20 years have made certain uses more desirable than others. Obviously, pre-2008, there was not a lot going on except for residential. So building like crazy with residential, there was also a lot of big box development. That kind of changed after that time period, kind of slowed down. Right now, industrial and housing in the current market are really, really hot, I guess, and there is a limited amount of space for that. So I think a lot of the industrial developers are really looking for large areas of land that are serviceable. And that may be the reason why this was an attractive site.
Awesome, thank you.
I think to add to that too, probably before this, we would have directed them to the I-43 Business Center for most projects, assuming they didn't,
Correct.
outsize that. I mean, we had that option there before that filled in. This is the extension of that.
Dave, could you pull up Exhibit B, please?
Sure, just one moment. I believe this is Exhibit B.
Yeah, so I'm looking at where you have the commercial lateral or arterial. It spells out that that is promoted, but not necessarily enforceable. Is that correct?
Correct. It's not required, but it gives you the option for a commercial use.
Okay.
along frontage. Again, you have to meet
Go
the
ahead.
minimum lot sizes and frontage and that type of thing, but it would allow you to put, so a good example would be you have a manufacturer in the back and you put your office complex in the front on a separate lot. Sometimes for financing, sometimes for taxes, sometimes you may not own all of the property. So it would allow that, or a daycare or whatever along the frontage. But again, as it is primarily an industrial park, those commercial corridors really don't dig deep into the properties. But again, this is only in that first phase. As this comes forward, we would have to amend it to the Plan Commission and Council to expand it. So those commercial areas, depending where new arterial roads are placed or designed, there could be additional areas for commercial. But at this time, that's all the arterial roads.
Okay, and I guess I'm looking at it more as a buffer from or to the residential areas, to see if there's a way that we could require that to be commercial without that option there.
You could require it. Sure, that would be just basically being a zoning along the arterial. You'd have to probably pick a depth, or have staff research that to pick a depth that we would make that frontage commercial only. Again, staff didn't go that route because this is really an industrial park itself. We just wanted to throw the option, and we did reduce the commercial uses considerably.
Okay, and I guess I was just looking up further west on Mason Street where the I-43 industrial park is, not on the maps here, but yeah, further west. And it just seems like having that commercial along that on the north side of Mason Street really helps with buffering with that neighborhood that's back there, or to the north of the I-43 industrial park.
Oh, on the south side of Mason?
South side, and then now there has been, like Uncle Mike's Bakery is on the corner Um,
Right, Quick Trip.
yeah, the Quick Trip there, and like just north of where your mouse is right now, there's some other commercial uses that have gone on the north side there, and
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
on this strip here.
and it seems like, I don't know, especially with the Grandview, or the traditional neighborhood going in over there, I would be inclined to require that commercial be run as a buffer.
Okay, and with that, are you thinking just along that northern portion of Grandview or on all of the arterial corridors?
I would say all of the arterial corridors. I guess probably except where Finger Road is, because I'm just seeing anywhere where there would be residential immediately across the street, I think there should be a buffer. So if that's Grandview and then along East Mason where it makes that first dog leg, but then to the east of there, that strip, I guess, wouldn't have to be, because it would be industrial across from industrial.
Sure, but, okay,
Yeah, right where your mouse is there.
along the stretch.
I see you guys put it in there because it makes sense, but to make it optional, I think, if I were in control of that land and I was an industrial user, I'd probably use as much of it as I could. So I think we have the opportunity to put that in play right now and make sure it's done the way it should be done.
Yeah, and I may defer to either Neil or Wendy, who are economic development arm. I think Wendy is still on, or she was. Neil is on now. But the thought process really, again, this is an industrial park. If all the frontage is designated for only commercial, that's going to drastically hinder industrial development because they won't be able to access the frontage anymore or have the frontage. Also, I guess I want to point out as well with industrial, we did put in larger buffers along the frontage. So all roadway frontage is going to have a larger setback and green space, architectural standards. And yeah. So
yeah, I do appreciate that. The architectural standards, that's definitely key, and landscaping too.
I mean, you could require that. It would be changing from an industrial park at that point, but that is purview of the Plan Commission to think about those things.
Dave, I've got a question. Can you show that one slide that showed that traditional neighborhood just north of the development?
Certainly.
Okay. Because I mean,
So
you
again,
have,
this is
this is a
different-
suggestion? Is that
Well,
what?
it's a planned unit development, so this is the way that area is zoned.
Okay,
So again, commercial along Grandview or multi.
Right.
Higher density multi right along the border.
right. We had that multifamily right there north of that as a buffer, in addition to the regulations as far as the site plan, where they have to have more of a greenery buffer too, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the buffers in the industrial park and the Grandview Industrial Park are pretty significant.
Okay.
And you
And
can
this,
see those on whatever page they're on.
and this Grandview Heights PUD, this is already something that's in place.
This has been in place probably, it was last amended, I think, last year, or the year before, but it's been in place since at least 2015, and I think before that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And again, the 2022 comprehensive plan showed that as a TND as well.
Were there any further questions or comments among the commission, or any questions for staff?
Question for Dave, probably. Since this is butting up against both Bellevue and Humboldt, Was there any communication or input with them on this? Just because it is a fairly substantial size development, or in this case, PUD, sorry.
There was. So we had contacted both Bellevue. If you notice on the future land use plan, and it does match the boundaries for the industrial park. To the south of that industrial park, it goes higher density to lower density as you go south onto Bellevue, towards Bellevue. Bellevue has residential future land use on their border with the city. So that's sort of really works twofold. One, worker housing and just housing, period, in a lot of areas that have a lot of wetlands. So those areas are really not conducive to large scale development like industrial or even commercial, but to kind of place homes or apartment buildings that would fit. To the west, or excuse me, to the east in the town of Humboldt, we had contacted the town, tried to get their future land use maps, and they were not supplied to us, and they are not online. So when the comp plan was done in 2002, 2003 adoption, they did look at the town, and it's basically why those land uses were placed there.
I can verify that their land use maps are not on there. I was just looking on the side here. That's a little.
Yeah. Land use or zoning maps aren't online.
Yeah, great, wonderful.
But one of the elements of any comprehensive plan drafting is communication with all neighboring municipalities. So they would have been contacted when that was drafted and when this was adopted.
I don't know if we had any comments from Public Works too. Was there any plans in place specifically for any facilities improvements specific to roads? Any specifically the ones, the commercial arteries that were listed on the whichever figure that was?
There are no current plans to upgrade those as the zoning's not in place, land uses aren't in place, but Public Works has been over the last 2 or 3 years installing sanitary sewers throughout the area. They have been sizing them for future land use. Obviously, certain things will have to probably change out there. Mason might have to go from a 2-lane as it goes east up to a 4 or a 3. I'm not an engineer, but to take those traffic volumes, I'm suspecting. Again, there probably have to be some regional ponds out here. But again, once this phase 1 is put into place and we reach out to property owners, at that time, Public Works will be looking more in detail of where interior roadways need to be. And they'll work closely with Windy on lot sizes, with economic development on lot sizes, and where those things should be placed. And then hopefully if there is a tax increment financing district in this area, those funds, that increment coming out of there would then fund the infrastructure, which then spur the future development. So that, again, that land use for the greater area is very important to think about.
Do we have any more discussion or questions for staff?
Dave, another question on the permitted uses, in the principal uses specifically. Just thinking of traffic specifically, one of them is the package delivery service under transportation uses. I personally would like to see that as a conditional versus a permitted. Just knowing the direction things are going in terms of delivery. So that would be my only note on the principal uses specifically.
Okay.
Is that something that you would consider is amendment or changes to the permitted versus conditional uses?
Definitely, all of this is a purview of the Plan Commission. I mean, you can look in detail at any section and make recommendations. I mean, as a whole, then we would send those recommendations off to the council.
we have any further discussion? Otherwise, I would certainly entertain a motion.
Commissioner Ravinsky, I know you had made the mention of the commercial on the arterials. Is that something you would want to be conditioned into a motion?
I believe so. Anything that's directly across from future residential. So re-looking at that map, it's basically the stretch along East Mason and Grandview. East Mason between Erie and Grandview, and then along Grandview. I think the rest of it, because it's going to be, industrial across from industrial, I'm fine with that, but at least along those stretches.
So that was north of Grandview and in between Erie and Grandview.
Yeah, it would be east of Grandview, right?
East.
West. Right, Grandview to Erie.
No, sorry, Erie to Grandview along East Mason, that frontage, and then the frontage on South Grandview going north on the east side of South Grandview.
Dave, could you put the map up so we can actually see those areas?
So that would be this stretch
Correct.
and this stretch.
That is correct.
That stretch right there on Mason's already pretty tight because you've got the church and the cemetery there. I don't know exactly how far it stretches. Those are going to be pretty, well, comparatively small lots between Erie and Grandview.
Up in this area?
Yeah, the church is right up there on Finger and cemetery is right south of it. Yeah, so yeah, right south of your cursor. I don't know quite how big those would be, but those would be pretty small lots anyway. I don't know if there's the minimum lot size would come into play for who would want to use that. They're definitely not going to be that big though.
Yeah, the future plans for those areas as well. So this section be multifamily. It's my understanding there's a lot of wetlands in here, however. So I don't know how developable it's going to be. This area right here right now is multifamily and it's being developed for that. Some commercial in this section. And as you go west, I guess, well, we can't quite get to it, but as you go further west, you have commercial along Mason and then residential behind.
Okay, I can see taking that section out though, but the going north of Mason Street along Grandview there.
I have a question with that. By doing so, are we limiting access?
They would
For
still have
developers?
access. They would still have access, but the use would not be, you wouldn't be able to put the industrial use in that area. And we would still have to make a determination if that goes forward of what kind of distance you're talking about. You know, is that 200 feet from the right of way, 300, 400, 500? And I probably have to lean back onto our economic development department to, you know, say what would be a suitable depth for a commercial use.
As I was looking at it along the further west down East Mason, it looked like 180 feet is like what the Uncle Mike's Bakery, what their site is. Just as a reference, if that helps at all.
Yeah, we typically don't recommend anything less than a 200-foot for a commercial user. But again, it always depends on that commercial user, you know.
So I guess I have the question with this tentative site plan that just went through this other meeting for phase one, if we require the commercial on the arterial, is that going to, just out of curiosity, is that going to stop that development?
I don't know.
Yes, Alder Chair Hanson, I can try to address that. I think that certainly would cause some hesitation in terms of the amount of acreage being purchased, and it could potentially threaten the project. I don't know that for certain. I think the white staff was certainly looking at in terms of, I guess, requiring the more extensive buffers and landscaping. Really, in general, throughout the entire project area was probably going to be a more effective use that at least individual industrial users could plan for and accommodate on their project site. I think requiring, there is certainly a limit to how much commercial use can occur. I think in the marketplace, in terms of requiring it, essentially by doing that, you're essentially just requiring a space buffer anyway. If there's no market for that commercial development, you're essentially requiring a space buffer that nothing's going to build on if there's no demand for it. So I think, in my opinion, it's almost more effective to certainly allow that as a possibility, but in light of that not being there, requiring a more substantial landscape buffer and either through screening, through landscaping, through whatever there was going to, which I think is kind of the intent behind the current regulations. So in that case, either a flat open commercial land with nothing on it versus actually a landscape or a berm or something else that actually would be a physical screen for sure. Certainly you could allow for that commercial use. Someone wanted to do that and put certainly the design requirements that are in there, but I think to actually ensure that it's going to be screened, I think the landscaping requirements and buffering requirements actually probably do a better job of that than simply assuming that maybe someday some sort of commercial use may come between those two uses on the side. So if it's a 200-foot area, I think I said if they don't have anything that they can't do anything on that, and there's nothing that only for commercial uses, and it would just end up sitting there. Actually, I think the more effective screen could actually potentially be the actual landscape and buffer that particular area, but still allow for that commercial use. Certainly in my background and my history, I would see more likely commercial uses wanting to locate near the intersections, obviously, of these arterials, being more interested in those particular areas. I think there's a significantly more chance of something happening in those cases. There's always certainly the possibility, I think, as Dave mentioned earlier, of actually getting, if there's a corporate office present, you certainly maybe putting that up on a front basis of still a component of a project is certainly a possibility. But in this case, there are multiple roads. Certainly on a larger site, there's going to be multiple roads, multiple building faces facing public streets and roadways. So I think by requiring by moving it to one spot, you're still not addressing the other spot. So you're still back to your landscaping and buffering, I think, situation in that case, in terms of making sure that that's adequately provided on that. So I guess the short version of the answer is it could potentially negatively impact the project. I think the landscaping and buffering requirements, I think, is presented, allow them some additional flexibility to at least address access as they need to.
Yeah, and if I could add one thing to that, not only for that site, sort of the business industry now is a little different than it used to be, where the office was separated from the factory, let's say, or from the warehousing. Those are more and more common. I think it's been for a long time, integrating on the same site as a campus. I imagine there's quite an economy of scale, or savings for that. I am not an industrial property owner, but I'm assuming so. And we're seeing a lot more of that sort of mixed uses within the same industry, and they sometimes don't want to be right next to each other either. So by allowing that type of use on the frontage, you would still allow that site to be an industrial site. You know what I mean? Right.
And thank you for that answer, Neil. So now, as far as, and honestly, that your answer it didn't matter whether it affected it or not. Looking at the design standards that you guys have put in place and the different landscaping, I feel like that, like Neil was saying, that's a better buffer than requiring some commercial property to go in. I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but that was kind of a suggestion, or like, look, this is what could happen. But honestly, I'm thinking way out on the edge of town to have, just commercial properties located out there. I mean, realizing that this is some of the last buildable land in town, but looking at the recommendations that staff has put forward for buffering, I'm comfortable not requiring the commercial.
Yeah, I think, and thank you, Neil, for explaining it that way. I guess my question is just, we're confident that what's in this PUD is gonna be enough of a buffer from the residential. And for me, if the planners say yes, that they're confident in that, I can agree with that.
Dave, I think that one was yours.
It was kind of both of you.
If we were not confident, we would have made it larger or bigger in the PUD regulations. You know, across the street type of uses, you see it in a lot of different places, especially in the older parts of the city. It is not something that's uncommon. It may be uncommon out sort of in greenfield sites, but as areas that develop, it's not uncommon practice. I'm sure if you think to yourselves driving through town, Packerland Avenue, Coffrin Drive, Radisson Drive, you see a lot of very similar scenarios. And those are areas developed with no buffer requirements from the street. The street itself kind of acts as a buffer. You know, and where they are adjacent, where lot lines are adjacent, we have a lot more buffer requirements as well. So we have buffers on both sides.
I guess from a kind of a non-science on it, Ken, when we did send it out to a couple developers, their reaction was kind of like, oh man, that's a lot of landscaping. So that in this regard, that makes us feel actually that we probably are leaning the right way, that they are a little hesitant to be like, oh man, that's a lot. That's a lot. Not that they couldn't do it, but they were definitely got their attention when we first kind of put those when that was presented to them. So, you know, certainly that's something, you know, we've on a case-by-case basis, we want to aim a little on the high side and make sure we're being a little bit higher than we want to, and especially in areas where there's adjacent uses that could, you know, have potential conflict. We want to make sure we mitigate that to the extent that we can. But I do think that that's something we do want to have to keep an eye on and ensure, you know, right now, I think we're confident that it is sufficient. We think it is going to provide a good screen, but we certainly want to keep an eye on that, and I would ask the commission to do the same as we go forward on these. Absolutely.
Awesome. No, I appreciate that input and apologize for dragging that through the weeds or through the landscaping. But yeah, I'm confident with your answers there, and I would make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Do a motion by Commissioner Ravinsky and a second by Alder Corpus Stacks. Now, did Vice Chair Miller have an addition to something as well? Dave, I saw you writing something down. Am I making that up?
Yes, he had made the recommendation that the package delivery service type uses be conditional rather than permitted.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
motion
just
would
make that.
include that.
Yeah, just to make it clear, all the transportation uses, so ground transportation, motor freight terminal, and package delivery would all be conditional. So they just any transportation uses.
Okay, so if we're making a motion, do we need to include that as well?
I would ask if you would include that, please. Yes.
That's me. My motion would include Vice Chair Miller's amendment to the PUD.
And
Okay,
I'll still second.
all right, perfect.
Lisa, before we go to vote, did we get the Alder distinction figured out? I just want to make sure that anyone in attendance knows who to reach out to for any questions about this. Yes, before it goes to council.
Well, I think Alder Dorf was north of Finger and Alder Corpus Stacks is south of Finger. Is that the
But I
dividing?
would suggest that no, I would have no vote on this at all. So this would need to go to the new Alder if they have concerns. I have no, I'm done on Tuesday. They're sworn in Tuesday. I'm here because it's still part of my job, but I will have no vote. So they need to, if someone wants to reach out, it would not be to me or it would not be to Alder Corpus Stacks.
It would be to the new District 1 Alder, and yeah,
Right.
absolutely. So So if,
Right.
Dave, were we able to verify that map to be sure?
Yes, I verified it too, Dave. You are absolutely right.
Okay.
Okay,
And
good.
there
That's what
wasn't
I found
an
online
address
and
there.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
it was farmland. That's why I didn't have anyone in my voter guide on that road. There's farmland.
Yep.
Right.
So I was like, this is farmland. So, okay, you were
Yeah, there were
absolutely
no,
right.
there are no residents there.
Right.
Okay. All right, so then we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Ravinsky, a second by Alder Corpus Dax, with Vice Chair Miller's addition. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will go ahead with a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and then that will go forward then to City Council for Tuesday, April 19th.
Correct. That'll be the first reading. It'll go for adoption the following meeting after that, which would be May 3rd.
Okay, for May 3rd. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Dave. And then moving on to informational. Item 1, green infrastructure code changes update.
Well, I will make this short and sweet. We have been doing a lot of additions, nothing permanent, but just kind of weeding out green infrastructure, learning more about it. I'm going to share my screen really quickly. So I just want to update you all what is happening with green infrastructure. So a bit of the background on this process. I believe this wonderful book, Green Infrastructure, was created in 2016, and that was working with a consultant, Julia Nordyke and Julie Hines, UWC grant, 1,000 Friends of Wisconsin. They created a tool for municipalities to prioritize and look through their code for anything that might hinder or not encourage green infrastructure. So not mandate things, but definitely give that initiative and benefit tied to it. So I'm just going to show you right now, we're currently in the process. So nothing is completely finalized, but I can also summarize a few of the changes from the zoning code, and then Melissa Schmitz, our resiliency coordinator who came on during the process, has been spearheading this for the Department of Public Works. So she can also maybe touch on some of the changes in those chapters of our code as well. So in 2020-ish, the city started working through this tool, this book, and it's down here. Honestly, it's really small on the screen, but if you Google green infrastructure or tackling barriers to green infrastructure code audits, you're going to find this. And it really breaks down every section of your code. So we're just focusing on the zoning and the stormwater management. We thought those were the most important. Revising and adopting code recommendations will be further steps in the process. Those are text amendments that would have to be publicly noticed, adopted, but this is just kind of giving you a high level idea of what the city is doing with their code. As I said, we prioritized, and the benefits are, at least the main benefits that we're focusing on right now are protecting private and public properties from flood hazards, improving water quality and local waterways, increasing resiliency for changing climate patterns. I know it's been fairly cyclical with water levels rising and then severely decreasing within almost 10-year spans. So we just want to encourage things that are adaptable in future developments and get new developers thinking about this and encourage them to do it. They are more long-term benefits, but they are also long-term cost savings. So we wanted to focus on that, and then also improving community livability. Within chapters 16, 24, and 42 and 44 of the code, we've looked at definitions, agricultural standards, landscaping standards. Parking was a huge thing, and I give Melissa a lot of credit. When we kind of went through our stakeholders list, we wanted to notify a lot of people in the real estate developing, building world, and she found a ton of even concrete pavement companies to reach out to and gain whatever feedback they had on preliminary changes, and just to kind of see their perspective through it. So right now we are actually in the public outreach. Internally, we've looked through those chapters, also focusing on permeable materials and surfacing, pollutant reduction through site plan review, and lastly, post-construction stormwater standards and long-term maintenance. So up until we've set a 20-day window for a variety of stakeholders to give us feedback on some of these changes or let us know these concerns before we go through the official steps of amending our code. So yeah, Melissa, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself or add anything.
Sure. So my name is Melissa Schmitz. I don't think I've ever been to a Plan Commission meeting yet. I started in October of 2020. So the Green Infrastructure Code audit was in process. And Madison, you did a great job of giving a full recap of where we're at right now. I work within the Public Works Department. However, for this particular project, it spanned many, many different departments, and that was a big part of gaining internal staff comments on the recommended changes. And these were all just recommendations that came out of the audit. It wasn't anything that, you know, the consultant said, you have to do this. It was a lot of staff input, forestry, parks, development team, public works, law department, lots of meetings with the law department on this. I'm sure I'm leaving a few out. So the codes that are being addressed primarily are 44, which are the landscaping standards, but also chapters 16 and 42, which address stormwater management. And then the other code, which we've already completed, and that one's already been codified, was just chapter 24, which addressed planned natural landscape areas in the noxious weeds ordinance. So that one was to encourage more native plantings, planned native plantings in people's yards. So that one's already gone through. Yeah, and out of everyone that has been contacted from our stakeholders group, I have heard back from a couple of construction companies, but that was all sent out March 24th. And we asked them to get in touch with myself or with Madison by April 15th. Madison, I don't know if you've heard back from anyone yet, but the construction companies that I've heard from have all been positive, and they just really want to, they've asked for the full draft markup so they can look to see how it may affect them in the future. And it's been a positive experience so far.
Yeah, I have received the same, which is great to hear, because I think initially I was a little bit worried about some backlash if it's more expensive or more difficult, but they were just curious, you know, what they can do and more about the timeline of when this could be implemented. And just the fact that it's not as stringent, it's more encouraging. They like that a lot.
Yeah. And when we talk about green infrastructure, I know, you know, in past city council meetings, it's gotten a little, you know, some attention, and that was mostly for green infrastructure in road projects. But green infrastructure, there are many, many different types of green infrastructure. And so I encourage you to reach out to myself or Madison with any further questions on this.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Madison and Melissa. That's encouraging that that the developers aren't thinking it's stringent and they're positive about it, because these are definitely changes that need to be made, I think. My personal opinion.
No, they're incredibly important. So thank you for the work you're doing. This is really good to see.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, and then moving on to item number 2, director's report, Mr. Stickschulte.
All right, gang, I will keep you, try to get you out of here shortly. We have our usual suspects. Essentially, a lot of our existing larger projects are taking up a lot of staff time. We've had some good work done on the WPS site here, researching for what sort of land uses and concepts might be occurring on that site. Staff is kind of working with the developer who has the option on that site to come up with a preliminary set of land uses to kind of maybe identify what sort of environmental cleanup will be required on that site. I guess we were kind of, I guess staff was a little bit the bad guy, me specifically. WPS was hoping that they could kind of work around some contamination and maybe pave some things. And we said, well, we kind of look at that site and we think anything on there could probably end up being residential. So we kind of think it all needs to be cleaned up. So we'll see how that process kind of works its way through. We got some good concepts. I think there's some good interested parties out there and doing some things, primarily residential uses, but a few office commercial uses still mixed in for the whole area. I think when it's fully cleaned up, it could be a great spot. Obviously, the other big X factor we're dealing with on that site is parking. In terms of whether or not a new parking garage may end up going there, depending on the future of the Main Street parking ramp, which has some contributions, basically some commitments made to Schreiber in terms of that building eventually going away. So we've got some things to work through. There's no pending project from Schreiber on that site, but certainly one thing we have to keep in mind, if they called tomorrow and said, hey, we want that spot, we have 2 years essentially to knock down the Main Street ramp and then get that land over to them at Schreiber. So while we'd be excited, we'd love to see them growing and expanding. That could cause a little bit of a crimp in our parking plans for the area. So trying to start that planning process a little bit more, coordinating with the WPS site and with the KI Center a little bit. Shipyard Phase 1 improvements are out on the street. We're taking bids and answering questions from contractors right now. So these are all the waterfront amenities, the kayak launch, the marina, the trail, some of those actual things going on there. So hopefully those come in close to being on budget, we hope. And actually we should be able to see some dirt being moved and actually some projects actually happening late this summer, early fall. So it'd be exciting to actually have something actually being physically worked on out there at the shipyard, all these plans and iterations and things done, actually finally moving forward on some improvements out on the site. We are meeting with Sea Rice Coal Company just to begin talking about the transition of maybe acquiring their first 10 acres on their site. Essentially as the planning has been awarded, folks probably know Brown County was awarded a $15 million grant from the state of Wisconsin to help start planning on the Pulliam plant project site. So we're excited to see that moving forward and making those port improvements. So that allows us, that's kind of the first domino to let us start talking about Sea Rice about what could happen then on the existing site. So we're excited to be starting that. Dave and several other people in the department have been spending a lot of time on the JBS site here of late. It's kind of coming up with trying to identify how much buildable land we actually have available on that site, and then looking with some of our partners and adjacent uses to see if we can really try to figure out the best balance between some housing development, which is kind of what JBS donated the land for. They really want to see some workforce and affordable housing on there. Kind of a really cool park amenity, which is also their financial contribution was to go towards that aspect of it. And then also working with the mayor's office and identifying kind of an urban agriculture kind of component to the project as well. So it's a 24 acre site. Our first glance at things looks like it's about 15 acres of that is usable. We're going to add some infrastructure to connect some things in there, and so our available space starts to get tight pretty fast. So we're trying to figure out how to be really efficient with our land uses, and then maybe try to identify some ancillary sites to kind of really address all three of those components. Had a good meeting with TWG, the development at the fort, the two elevator shafts standing over there over at the rail yard. It sounds like they are hopefully getting ready to move forward. Both the developer, the DDL Properties based companies, and TWG have an agreement on amendments to their current development agreement. So they have sent those to the city for review. We're taking a look at those right now. All indications are at this point, we think we're pretty much good to go. So fingers crossed, we'll have that to council for final approval here shortly. And then actually see that project moving forward again. So we really are excited to see that one hopefully get back moving again. 200 North Monroe has been doing all the environmental surveys out on the site. If folks have been driving by the Associated Bank lot and seen the big truck punching holes in the ground, they're actually doing the environmental testing for what's underground there, and working with Matt Buchanan on our staff to kind of assemble the environmental remediation plan for that particular site. A host of other projects are still kind of being kicked around. 222 Cherry Street had a good meeting with that developer today, talking about adding multiple stories on top of the old Boss's building at 222 Cherry Street. Apparently that was the old Masonic Lodge back in the day. That actually had, and that was actually a 4 or 5-story building at the time. So they've done an architectural study and the foundations are still good enough to put those stories. There was a fire at some point, so they lost those top stories. So now they're actually looking to kind of add residential units back to that on an existing site. So that's an exciting one because it's an existing use. There's no foundation has to be dug, no environmental thing. It's already on an existing foundation essentially. So we're kind of excited to see that one come forward. And I said, really, we're just seeing, it's probably some good progress over at East Town Mall. Folks have probably noticed kind of the first building of the in-lot kind of being constructed. We're going to be meeting with some of the engineering and public works staff, talking about trying to make some pedestrian improvements to that particular area on that crossing to the residential neighborhood to the north. Also meeting with kind of our Safe Routes to School team and kind of taking a look at trying to get some implementation on some of those pedestrian improvements really throughout the city here pretty soon. So had a good meeting between the Public Works Department, engineering and the mayor's office to try to get some of those things identified. So we're encouraged to see hopefully some of those improvements get made this summer as well. So with that, certainly able to answer any questions on those or any other projects you may have any questions on. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Neil. There's just, it seems like there's so much going on. I know when I've been going past on West Mason, in front of Burlington and Toys R Us, you know, that whole area over there, you can see they've already got it fenced off for the scooters and the Arby's that's going in over there. I've been waiting for that. I've been watching. Is the Caribou Coffee going in yet?
I know we've got plans sitting in our office. I'm assuming they're getting ready to if they have it pretty soon. I know we've got a full set of plans for sure.
Yep.
So
I'm military. I love Caribou Coffee too, Lisa. I used to go there when I went to Chicago all the time.
I only get it when I'm in Minneapolis, and I don't remember the last time I was in Minneapolis. So
I swear there's one in Wausau, or is it Stevens Point? There's one over there somewhere.
out west.
you know, Madison's got one too. I know
Madison.
Madison's one too. Yeah.
they're cool.
And I like their
Appleton have
coffee.
one?
All I know is
Appleton have one.
Okay.
all I know.
awesome.
All I know
my-
is Green Bay has to be more caffeinated per capita than just about any place on the planet these days. It's amazing how many coffee shops are popping up. So
Did we hear any more on the Starbucks?
that's a good question. We're waiting for the TIA to get completed on that, Dave. Last we heard, is that where are we at on that?
Paul is here. He probably can address it.
Yeah, it's been left with the traffic engineer and the applicant trying to work out the details of that. So that's why it hasn't come back yet until we get that kind of ironed out and make sure Dave Hansen can come to the plan commission meeting. We're kind of in a holding pattern.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much, Neil. And then looks like item number 3 on informational date of the next meeting is April 25th of 2022.
Hey, guys, this is officially my last.
Now
meeting.
she's
Done this
now we're-
before.
now
We've
we're
done this
good.
before.
Didn't want to see it.
Third time saying it.
You know, citizen members are permitted too.
Well, we loved having you, and you're certainly welcome back because I think we're still short a seat, right?
He's thinking I'm done, and I'm like, nope, not done yet. Nope, not done yet.
Well, we certainly appreciated your time. We loved having you here.
Thanks, it's been fun.
Yeah, definitely.
We're like the
Maybe I'll be back.
mafia. We're like the mafia, Veronica. You never
Right.
really
Yep,
leave.
Just when I think
That's
I'm
right,
out,
yeah,
they pull me back in.
All right.
I've seen it. I know what you're talking about.
Are we still short one member? Well, minus the new incoming council.
Alder, aren't we?
Yes, I think
Yeah,
we're still down on one. Yeah,
yeah.
I think we're
Autumn's.
mayor's office is working on that. I think so.
Have a good evening. Happy Easter.
Do
Whoever
we need to
celebrates it.
Did you vote to adjourn?
Oh, yeah.
I was the one who was always good for that.
Motion to adjourn.
So move. Second.
The motion by Alder Corvusek, second by Commissioner Daniels. All those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. See you in a couple weeks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank
Night.
you.
Bye-bye.